Hi guys, welcome to our talk. We're going to talk about cross-platform modding, specifically using Unreal and how we expanded ARK's ecosystem to include a wide variety of really awesome tools and features for modders and for gamers. I'm Thomas Williamson. I'm the CEO of Grove Street Games. We handled the mod integration of ARK Survival Ascended for Overwolf and also in collaboration with Studio Wildcard. And I'm going to pass it off to Shahar.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here and see everybody and kind of experience the vibe of whatever's happening with Unreal and the ecosystem. Very grateful to kind of come and talk and also discuss how Unreal and Epic are affecting ecosystems outside of what Fortnite is. A little bit about us at Overwolf. We're a behind-the-scenes player. We thrive on making the best games even better through supporting creators and game studios. And we kind of look at the gaming industry as a trinity of the gamer, the creator, and the game studio, and we're trying to standardize the relationships and help these ecosystems emerge. I want to go into a specific ecosystem with ARK, with GSC and Wildcard, which we've managed to do some amazing work using Unreal and kind of show what is possible outside the worlds of Fortnite, and then discuss overall the trend of what's happening in our industry. And what you're going to see now is a collection of mods that have a wide variety they have a wide variety of creativity and execution, also a wide variety of creator profiles. There's a single modder that's working on some of these. There's full teams working on some of these. There are game studios working on some of these. Anything from items and cosmetics to full-blown game worlds, all existing on ARK Survival Ascended. Let's take a look. Okay, so what you've seen there is a whole ecosystem of a game that is a standalone game, ARK Survival Ascended, and anything that goes in it. There's a lot of creations, from drawbridges to animals to cosmetics to entire game systems that aren't related to ARK that exist on ARK as a creation platform. And I want to start by talking a little bit about what's going on in the world right now in terms of user-generated content. And there's a revolution happening, and it's not only in the gaming industry, it's across all industries, right? So the creator economy is something that is boosting everywhere, from TikTok to Shopify to Spotify to our own game worlds. And within the game world, there are three really major players that are driving it. There's Epic with Fortnite and Unreal Engine and anything that goes on inside Epic. There's Roblox, and then there's a slew of other titles, from Minecraft to GTA to ARK itself to The Sims to World of Warcraft that are their own ecosystems that have user-generated content and creator communities. At Overwolf, we deal with all of the rest. So we get to see a good view of what's happening in the industry from a user-generated content perspective. So I want to talk a little bit about the macro. The macro is, as we've seen it across all the industries, the consumer isn't a consumer anymore. A consumer is a participant. And in the gaming world, the consumer at times is a co-creator of the experience. And that is due to just the level of engagement, excitement, and just habitual consumption habits that have changed across the industries, which is a great thing, and it's an opportunity. Facing that opportunity are three massive major hurdles. One, there's a massive explosion of content. On Steam alone, last year, there were 19,000 new games released on Steam alone. Most of them will not be played. Take that into consideration and think that's just Steam. That's not mobile. That's not what's happening inside the UGC and the map ecosystem of Fortnite or Roblox or Minecraft. That's just games. That's game developers working on games. That's massive competition of content. Second, there's an overwhelming demand of content from the gamers that are playing a specific game. So there's no longer the core experience is enough. People like variety. And gamers of all ages today like to tweak and play with what they're doing. So if the studio isn't strong enough to produce, and it's not, content at a velocity that is satisfying the gamers, they're just going to move on to another experience that does. And the third one is the rising cost of user acquisition. To bring gamers today to play a game is very tough. For those of you who are creating inside the Fortnite ecosystem, you're not maybe as privy as how complex it is to bring gamers to your experience, but it's just going to get worse and more expensive. So these three things are kind of coming in conjunction and are really causing for a massive shift and change in the industry. All is great because of the first category that is now way more kind of has that entrepreneurial spirit of creating. Because right now what we see is that the leading AAA games in the market, all of them have UGC strategies in place and are working on UGC. There's some other games here that we work with that we didn't put right here, which is Hogwarts Legacy. We just started supporting, and also Inzoi, Craft and Zinzoi that's coming out, and then a bunch more. And what that means is that the big boys at large have understood something that they haven't understood for years, is that if they want to survive and move into the future, they must harness user-generated content. And Epic and Roblox understood that way, way long ago, but it's not going to be enough, because the creator of the future will need a few sources of avenue or revenue. And what we're seeing, and what we're seeing specifically with ARK and other games, is that you can actually make a living by creating in these ecosystems. Basically, from our vantage point, how we see the industry moving forward is from a core game experience mindset into consuming creator economy concept. The core experience will provide kind of the first leeway, the first leap into the game itself, but then a legion of creators is going to drive the massive engagement on that creation. And it was amazing to see Diego from Epic talk yesterday, I think, about how for the first time a map creator surpassed in popularity the Fortnite game itself. We see that happening across the game industry, which means there's a massive opportunity for anybody who wants to create, whether it's a solo creator or a game developer, AAA, AA. Diving into ARK Survival, what makes this, what we're going to present today is how Unreal itself unlocked UGC and modding opportunities for ARK. So ARK is a very popular game. ARK Survival Evolved existed on Steam with a great modding community, but Studio Wildcard really wanted to make a leap and really saw the vision of what we're talking about here and wanted to harness and kind of level up whatever is happening with modding and present new opportunities. So we teamed up with GSG and Wildcard and Overwolf to create an ecosystem that is the first of its kind in many ways outside of the Roblox and Epic ecosystems, a UGC ecosystem. What that means is that on 2023 October, we launched PC only at first, an in-game modding ecosystem within ARK, and then expanded it to PlayStation 5 and Xbox. Cross-platform, cross-play, so I can play from my Xbox and you can play from your PC and we'll play in the same instance, the same mod, which was done for the first time in this particular way, and it did really, really well. We also launched a little over a year ago a new category of creation called premium mods. So for the first time, those creators, those elite creators that can create DLC level mods could sell them in-game. And that has done extremely successful as well, which all kind of showed us that creation and creators can really lead the future and make a living and make their passion into a profession. We're going to dive down with Thomas now and see how it's actually being done. And then I'm going to come back and talk a little bit about go-to-market and how you actually seed a community like that.
Thanks, Shahar. So let's talk about making it happen. Just kind of forewarn you, I'm going to go through about 20 slides. It's going to cover a large breadth of specialties. So like mostly we're going to try to keep things relatively high level, but there's going to be some engineering, there's going to be some design, stuff like that, just to kind of go over what sort of things you need to encompass when you're developing UGC for your game, and also kind of go into some specifics in terms of how we're going to integrate with Overwolf and how we did that with ARK. So there's really three pillars to UGC. Technology is really the top pillar. You have to make sure you have the tech in game to make this happen. You need to make sure that you're fostering good content creation, and you have to have a great go-to-market policy so that your creators feel supported in terms of having your UGC actually in the face of the users and that they're able to download it and enjoy it. So I'm going to go over technology, and then I'll pass it over to Shahar for content and go-to-market later. So first, let's kind of go over what that user experience looks like. This is a long video, so I'm going to scrub just a little bit. So the players have access to this store that's directly in the game. Inside the store, there's free and premium mods. Here, they're going to go in, they're going to purchase a mod. So that all these mods are available, it's searchable. Every single mod has video or screenshots that the mod creator has uploaded along with good summaries. There's a whole rating system. And there's also obviously like reporting systems and things like that for mods that shouldn't be on there. Once they've selected a mod that they really enjoy and they've seen all the assets for it, they're able to click to purchase it, and then on PC it'll take them to a browser here. It takes them to the TebEx checkout where they can in one click go ahead and purchase it, and it'll take them back to the game, and then they'll have the mod in game. The different experience on consoles is obviously that they're going to go into first-party purchase flow instead of TebEx. So it's really, really seamless. They do their purchase, and I don't think we show that in this video process, but then they continue. Now it takes them right back to the game, and then they can select to install it right there in the upper right there. So let's just talk about, like, that sounds so easy for the players, so we have to talk about how we make that easy by doing the hard stuff on the dev side. And the first thing I want to go over is when you're going through like even the initial design phase for a game, or when you're thinking about adapting your game such that the game systems support mods, you have to make a number of changes or a number of things that you need to consider. The game has to know what to do with content. Like that's the most important thing that most games do. They got to be good and data-driven, so you can't do a lot of hard-coded stuff if you want that stuff to be available to mod creators. You need to have nice, good blueprint hooks and things like that. So you need to add extensibility wherever extensibility might be needed for a mod. When you do that, what I mean is you need to make a nice, decent game features style system so that you can have a plugin, which I'll get to later, so that you can have some sort of asset that can plug into both the server and client side that's easy for your game to parse. And so that could mean anything to any of you based on how your game is designed. I know that's kind of open-ended, but just kind of have to have that mindset whenever you're developing features. And whatever data asset you use that's going to control what a mod is needs to have a range of custom applications. So like for instance, if someone wants to make a mod that has both a character and a new map and a new game mode all at once, which is very common for a lot of games, you need to make sure that whatever it is can support all of those things simultaneously, however you can construct that container. And then you need to make sure that all of that stuff is easy to test. Obviously, you can do that yourself in your game using PIE by putting content into one of these containers. So then when you're designing your systems with mod support in mind, you want to maintain decent blueprint hierarchies and know which content is going to be provided to the mod creator. This perfect example is if you have like licensed content or something like that. Obviously, you don't want that to end up in some sort of creation kit for your players, but you need to have base classes so that they have support for almost any sort of thing they might do. For instance, if you were making a new weapon, or if you wanted them to make a new weapon, you'd want to put all the functionality for a pistol in some sort of base pistol class, but you might not want to provide the actual pistol content to them. So make sure that there's a good hierarchy of how to make that sort of functionality available to them. The more data-driven things are, the easier it is to integrate mods. I think that goes without saying. Use blueprint hooks. And so what I mean by this is if you've been making functions blueprint callable a lot, maybe make them blueprint native events if you think it might be something someone might want to override. This does have some overhead. So like if you make something blueprint callable when you do a C++ to C++ call, that's pretty much instantaneous. However, once you make it a blueprint native event, then it's got to have to check an actual function map on the class to do the call. So that does slow things down. So don't do this on something that's in any core loops or anything like that. And then add hooks for things you don't use. So I put an example of on weapon attached. Maybe you don't need that in your class, but if you have things like that for like on possess, on weapon attached, when game mode events happen, things like that, have blueprint extensible events, then the players can go in and make cool changes or make new things that you wouldn't even think of. And then always just follow Unreal best practices as best you can, and not just with blueprints. Like, the more you adhere to how Epic likes things to be done, the more their documentation is going to be relevant to a mod creator. If you go rogue and you make a huge new system, just keep in mind that when you present that new system to a mod developer, you're going to have to be able to explain that to them. So it's a lot easier if you can just allow them to use all of the Epic tools. So what is a creation kit? What do we suggest for a creation kit? Mod creators need a familiar tool that makes it easy to add new assets to your game. So I would recommend, instead of making a whole new editor just for your game that creates assets that are exactly perfect for your game, that you just adapt your editor build into something that the players can use for their own mod kit. It's proven to work. It's effective recruitment into using all the tools that you guys have used as game developers. And it's a straightforward deployment process. We know how to roll together an editor build and send it off to a client. Obviously, providing example content is super important. They need to know how to make a mod. A lot of them are perhaps completely new to game development. So you want to say, here's a test map with a cube in it, now make another cube, and they'll be excited. And then really need to make sure that you determine that included content. You don't want to include every single texture and every single map. The more you include, honestly, the cooler it is to the mod developer, that they can see as much of the stuff that you've done as possible. That's great. Just obviously keep in mind IPs, package size, and what you don't want getting out. So yeah, the creation kit, secure editor build. We use a new build define in-house. I forget what the define is, but it's something like ARK kit or something. And then we if-def'd out some secure parts of the code base, so we didn't want to make sure people knew or had the code for, like exploit detection, keys to anything, any kind of backend stuff that you might allow your privileged servers to have access to, things like that. You want to make sure those are gone at compile time. Exclude any third-party plugins you don't have rights to distribute. This could mean anything, but just I can't really get into the legality of all of these things, but if the plugin is something that you've exclusively licensed for your game, you're going to have to make sure that's either not in the kit or you've come across some sort of business solution with that plugin provider to make sure that you can do it. WWise, I think, is a great example for that. Players want to make audio, but if you completely swapped out the audio plugin, they're going to have a hard time if you've exclusively licensed that for the game. OK, so the creation kit is also going to have a place where modders can actually upload the content. They need to have like a dialog where they can take their plugin, I'll get to that, where they use the dialog to kick off steps to test or publish the work. OK, so now we've made our game systems, they've made their asset, they've put it in their editor build. How are they going to take this asset and actually get it into the game itself? How are we going to cook and package this thing? So we need to meet a variety of concerns for distribution. It needs to be easy to load. It's got to load right on top of your cooked versioned game. And it has to survive any content updates you might make later. So like, they ship a mod now, you update the game in 3 months, how does that mod survive? How's all that stuff keep working if you've changed something maybe fundamental? It needs to stay light. Like whatever the package is, we have to keep this pretty small, especially if you're distributing to consoles or mobile platforms or something like that. You have to keep that package size as tight as possible. And then it should be really simple to set up for the mod developer. They need to understand what this encapsulated package is. So how are they going to make all of this stuff happen? So luckily, there's something that exists. Surprise, every mod is a plugin. That's what we've used for ARK, and I've seen this across the board as kind of the best way to package and distribute the mods. And just there's a little hack in there. We use the metadata from the plugin itself to store data about the mod so that it's not actually mounted until we need it. And that's just one aspect of the plugin system we've used. OK, so how the mod is cooked, this is basics, kind of getting into a little bit of nitty gritty here. The content is cooked just like a DLC plugin. That way, whatever content is needed in the mod is going to assumed to be delivered right on top of the cooked game content that you've already packaged. That's how DLCs work, so they only include that content. We use the automation tool for this. Those are the two command lines you need, just the name of the DLC and what release version it's based on. And then there's a special whole tutorial on how to package and cook DLC that Epic provides, and we just follow that same mantra. And then making a Zen Loader compatible is really just as simple as then mounting the Packer UCAS file, and then doing a special call to append the asset registry state. You don't have to do that if your game isn't using the asset registry a lot, so just keep in mind that's just an extra thing we had to do for ARK. Okay, so being forward compatible is probably one of the trickiest parts of this. So how do you make it so that, again, if you make a bunch of really fundamental content changes to your game in a few months, a mod that's been shipped now is going to work later. So the number one thing you can do, the most obvious thing to do, is your creation kit. Every time you make big changes to your game, ship a new version of your creation kit so that mod developers have access to the latest tool chain or the latest material, base materials or anything like that. And then something very specific, save unversioned properties is a tag when you're saving a package. I don't exactly remember the command line for it, but there's a command line. If you Control-Shift-F for save unversioned properties, you'll find it in the editor. There's a very specific command line when you're cooking that turns off binary serialization and turns on property tagging, which is a slower way to serialize, but it makes sure that any properties that are in the class are maintain compatibility with future versions, even if they change the type. And then, yeah, every time you change a variable or type, do it like Epic would do it whenever they release a new engine version. If they got rid of something, and they almost always mark it _deprecated so that content remains compatible for future versions, I would recommend that you do the same thing once you know that mods are out there. Okay, so let's talk about remote packaging. This is a big part of it. Whenever they are in the creation kit and they select their name of their plugin and upload it to the cloud through Overwolf's backend, all of that data is essentially the source data. That source data is zipped up. Everything from essentially the plugin folder is zipped up and sent over to Overwolf, and then they cook it on site in one of their backend servers. The reason why they do this for ARK specifically is because they have a full editor build that has access to the first-party libraries and cooking support for PlayStation and Xbox. I think that this is also just a good solution in general because it is a secure way to make sure that we have access to the source data in case an emergency recook of data is necessary with a content update. So if you were to change, a perfect example is a shader. So if you go in and if you change a shader that changes all the materials or changes the offsets of something, then every single material that's in your mods are going to break. In that case, you're going to want to make sure that the source data is available to Overwolf for a recook with new content. Okay, oh, I'm hitting the wrong button, I'm sorry. Okay, so how does this work? The players, or the creators, first they're gonna make their stuff in your special editor build. They're gonna test it in PIE. And they're gonna create a CurseForge account on Overwolf's website. And then they're going to upload everything they wanna test to the cloud. CurseForge is then going to use their backend servers to cook it. And then the players are going to be able to test it in your game. Once all this stuff is done, they see the mod because their account is what's logged in inside the game. They see that mod specifically for them, along with any whitelisted accounts that they've listed for the mod, so they can test it in the actual live environment. This is particularly important for consoles, which I'll get to later. But essentially, if all they've tested is PIE, that they don't know how well this is going to work in the actual live environment. This is how they do their live environment testing. Okay, so that's all great. All that stuff works. We can see how this all rolls together, and now they've got full mod deployment inside of the game, but this actually hasn't happened for you yet because you haven't integrated any of the actual Overwolf plugins. So Overwolf provides a suite of CurseForge plugins. There's a game-ready UI. It's just using standard UMG. Whenever you're in ARK, they select the mod tab. This opens up from their plugin the widget that they made that just controls all of that flow. Controlling downloading and user sign-in and all that stuff. There's another plugin for editor support that allows for mod upload and packaging and CurseForge sign-in as well. And then there's like the core plugin, which is the REST API, where all of this stuff is actually communicating with their backend. So just to kind of go over that in detail, the Unreal plugins both talk to CurseForge through a REST, talk to CurseForge through a REST API that's managed on your servers through just C++ calls, and then on your client through the UMG plugins that they provide. The plugins are just mounted. You initialize them on project startup with account details that you're provided with Overwolf, and you're all set up with them. And that's it. I put that in quotes, obviously, because maybe you'll have engine discrepancies. You might have some incompatibilities with how you set up your widget system, things like that. But you're all devs, so I'm sure you'll be able to work out some of the hopefully simple problems that might come from integrating any new plugin. And then just sort of an aside, something that's really cool about this is now, aside from just the creators, for you as a game developer, now you've established a really good content delivery platform for yourself. You can use the exact same tools that you've just provided your mod developer to bring small content drops into your game. And because you control it, you can download a mod for the player whenever you need to. And that's a really easy way to provide small content drops for things like holidays or events. And it really does show seriousness to the mod community when you use the exact same tools that you're telling them to use as a developer. They really appreciate feeling like they're pretty much at parity with the developer in terms of how these things are deployed. And let's go over premium mods and first parties real fast. OK, so first parties provided a number of complications. The console mods, what we ended up doing for ARK is they go through a separate review process that's performed by Overwolf, where they're just making sure there's no IP violations or there's no ESRB problems or anything like that in terms of what players are submitting. And then console storage is also another problem. You have fixed limits per title on some of the platforms, and so you're going to have to look at what those limits are for your title. And I think for ARK, we actually ended up going into our first parties and asking for some exceptions to make sure they could download more content than just what was provided. And then there's just specific instability and exploit concerns. You always have to be aware that because these are closed platforms, you want to make sure that the ways that your creators are making stuff for these consoles are going to be something that's going to make the console happy. So you have to encourage mod developers to not create stuff that's too large or that's going to take up too much RAM. If it's something that's inherently unstable, it's not going to do well on the console. And you just have to make sure that as creators, the mod developers know that console players have different expectations. And so that's sort of a new dialogue that we haven't had to pass off to mod developers so much in the past before. And yes, I can tell you that ARK is more unstable on consoles when they're using a large number of mods, but the players still do it and they really enjoy it. Then, OK, so mods can be sold. We obviously, there's a huge ecosystem you can unlock, and you all saw some of the benefits of that could be. Obviously, with how Fortnite does it and how ARK has been really successful selling premium mods. Creators are heavily incentivized if you give them a large rev share in your established game ecosystem. And it also keeps them from migrating to making mods in a different game. If you give them the ability to sell mods in your game, then they're going to be really happy with staying there and making mods once they start to make a little money. And then just as an aside, use tiered pricing if you're going to go console. If you're on PC, this isn't as important. And if you're never planning to go to console, it's not important. But if you're going to use these first-party marketplaces, using price tiers keeps things simple. You say, OK, you just bought a $2 ticket. Now you can get a $2 mod, and doing that exchange is a really simple process. And now I'm going to pass it back to Shahar.
OK, I'm going to run really fast on other pillars that are as equally important. Because if you remember, it's a noisy world, a lot of competition over content. And in general, it's hard to get noticed. So content and discovery become key to thriving in this ecosystem. So if you buy the vision of the world is going into being more and more UGC reliant and the gaming world being more and more driven by UGC, this is the goal you want to create for your game. You want to create a flywheel, and you want to man every station of that flywheel. So at the top, we have services, creation kit, everything technical that Thomas just laid out and that we worked on together. That's the foundational base of a creator being able, or game studio being able to move forward and deploy. Those services are then come to the creators and the game developers, which create experiences on them and content. That content is then pushed into gamers, and then gamers engage it. Some buy it, but it drives engagement and retention in a way no other mechanism does. So once you got this set up, you're good to go. And I want to show you how that looks at the end. What you're going to see is organic. It's an influencer talking about premium mod, and pushing it out. And just notice this is what happens when this is in place.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Spotlight featuring the Gigantophis by Moronada. So, the Gigantophis is a really massive prehistoric snake, and in the context of ARK, this is a $5 premium mod, and premium for a good reason, because not only has Moronada pretty much just reinvented snake movement in an ARK mod, let alone in video games in general, but for what some people might think, oh, it's just a snake, this is really feature-packed with a lot of flavor, a lot of abilities, a lot of utility, and this is like a really rich mod.
So basically, what you've seen this is kind of a relationship between the two sides that are going to be more and more essential. It's between the creator, the influencer, Twitcher creator, and that side of the extrovert type of a creator, and the actual creator themselves that built the mod, that they have no direct relationships, but through that flywheel are now teaming up to push this forward, and this drives sales, as we'll soon see. So just generally speaking, you want to think about promoting content creation physically by running 3 phases. There's the first phase of seeding, which genuinely, when we work with a community that has, whether it has or doesn't have a modding community, we reach out to prevalent gamers or content creators from that community, and we team up with them to create some sort of a mod squad, which is an elite group of creators that can now seed that community. We then move to seed the first creations. And when we launch the community, we start to scale with something like you see up at the top with the Arkathon mod contest, where then we go out to the community and then enlist a legion of people to just come and play and tinker. And there's usually categories of creations based on sophistication and kind of fidelity. And then really what matters is the last phase, because in UGC, consistency is king. Consistency in creation, consistency in communication, consistency in fellowship. And that's what you really, when you're really building that flywheel, that's what you're really thriving. It's these 3 phases. A little bit about content moderation. It's a bigger deal when you're working with studios and games that are trying to become content platforms, because they have less experience with content moderation, and safety is king. Safety is king. We work today with, aside from Studio Wildcard and GSD, we also work with Warner Brothers and Hogwarts Legacy, and we're about to work with Krafton. And the first phase and the first barrier is like, we don't want Shrek in Hogwarts, or whatever version of that is, because that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. So you create, it's not that complicated, it's not that scary, we've been doing it for years, but you need to be aware and need to know how to do it. I've seen another lecture by Epic about how they're going to integrate IP into their ecosystem, which is done wonderfully. So it's not that different. Basically, there's a 3-layer moderation system. The first one is automated moderation, which is pretty much tools that help us detect if something goes wrong. There's manual moderation. We actually have a team in-house going over things. And then, of course, the community moderation, which is ending up at the end to be the most effective. If there are any things or issues that come up, and there's could be a slew of issues, they'll raise a flag and help us tackle it. A little bit about content discovery, because that's a big deal. So content discovery, the key is that the studio needs to be involved and push out your content with you. And that can happen on the right-hand side in-game. And what you're seeing is a spike at the bottom of engagement once the mod is presented on, featured on the main carousel in-game. And then you have all sorts of influencers that can come along. Some of them, if we work together, we help kind of gather up. And some of them just come on their own. And what you're seeing is a very famous influencer, I think in Saudi Arabia, pushing out a mod, 4.1 million views, and you can see the sales spike on the bottom, what happens when that person pushes that out. And of course, social media, whether it's via the game or via your channels, all of that kind of working together in unisex to drive content discovery. A little bit about driving revenue. This becomes like a regular sales activity, so you need to be more involved in how to activate your community and how to drive your sales. We, of course, do all that as white glove service for the game studios we work with. But basically, you have seasonal sales, and you have redeem codes for influencers, and you create an ecosystem where selling is a part of the natural flow of content creation, which is a new thing, because mods up until now haven't been something you commerce with, and they still, the majority are not, they're free. But a small percentage of top creators can make a living out of it, and this is kind of the way we do it. So last but not least, brand partnerships. Premium mods open up the possibility to work with premium brands. So this is the Power Ranger brand that we brought into ARK with Luke Northworld, right? And what we see here, what's great, again, I told you again, that the world is noisy. What we see here, you could see IGN, PlayStation, all these engagements and all these awareness tools are happening because the brand is in, and they're happening organically, which again makes the mod be more seen and then also be more downloaded. We're going to do a few more of these inside ARK coming very soon. I guess I'm going to wrap up by saying, as you understand, we think UGC is and will be the driving force of the gaming community, and whatever it is you guys are doing, you should be a part of this ecosystem, whether it's within Fortnite and Unreal Engine, or whether it's within ARK with us, or whether it's in another game, or whether it's in 5, 6 different games, because that's the way it's going to be. Thank you. We'll be taking questions now.